Hey everybody, Mark from Northeast Bass Fishing. How you guys doing? Well, I had a subscriber request to talk about tournament bass fishing strategies. Now that is a pretty wide topic to discuss. And when I first saw it, I thought about it. I said, well, that's going to be kind of tough because, like I said, there's a lot of factors that go into tournament fishing. But I thought I would just kind of talk about my experiences, my opinion on things, and what I did when I prepared for tournaments. Now, I was not a Elite Series pro. I fished local club tournaments, federation stuff, like I said, club stuff, opens when I lived in Jersey, probably for over 30 years, and it's fun. If you are watching this and you have never fished a bass tournament in your life or been a member of a bass club, I recommend, if you want to become a better bass fisherman, I recommend you give it a try. If you have a local club by you and it's affordable, and you're interested, I think it's a great way to become a better fisherman. That is why I got involved sometime in the 90s. My first bass club was a local club when I moved to Sussex County in New Jersey. Was Hog Wild Bassmasters, and this is mid 90s, early to mid 90s. And I just wanted to learn more about bass fishing. And that is really why I think anyone would be motivated to join a bass club. You want to fish with people that have fished longer than you, are better than you, and that's how you learn. That's how you learn. And I learned so much from all those guys. There's no one that you can fish with that you can't learn something from. So if you really want to explore tournament fishing because you want to learn how to be a better bass fisherman, I'm all for it. I think that's a good idea, and it's a good way to look at it. Now, as far as strategies go, I think probably the most important thing when you fish a tournament or you are a tournament bass fisherman, as you become more experienced and you find your strengths and what you feel your strengths are as a bass fisherman. Some guys, in my case, I like to flip and pitch. I would consider myself a power fisherman. I would consider myself a shallow water grass fisherman. I like to throw a jig. I like to throw, a Texas rig bait of some time, a creature bait or whatever. I like to power fish with topwater, with spinner baits, with chatter baits. That's how I like to fish. And I fish with guys that are like me and they think I'm fishing very normal speed, shall we say. I fish with guys that think I fish way too fast because they're more methodical than I am of picking apart like a certain spot on a lake or working a certain, I may take 2 or 3 or 5 casts on a jig on a tree. Some guys may take 20, may take 30. That's just the way I fish. If I fish a tournament on a small lake, I could maybe lap the lake twice in a tournament day. That's just the way I fish. And I think that's really the way you have to look at it. I think you have to fish to your strengths. If you like to drop shot, drop shot. If you like to throw a spinner bait all day, throw a spinner bait all day. If you're a topwater guy, if you're a flipper or pitcher, a jig fisherman, whatever you are, do it. If you're a crankbait fisherman, do it. Really focus on your strengths as a fisherman. Now, as far as tournaments go, a lot of it'll depend on what kind of body of water are you fishing. Now, if you're fishing local club tournaments, you may be fishing 5 or 10 events a year on lakes that are 200 or 300 acres. Could be electric only lakes. That's what we have in Jersey a lot. And I think as you get more experience and you know how those lakes fish and you'll develop your strengths on that lake, that's how you'll become more successful and become a better bass fisherman. Now, I would say probably another important aspect would be what season or what time of the year are you fishing? If I'm going to fish a tournament, let's say, everybody, and I'm talking the Northeast, that's where I've grown up and lived all my life. If you're fishing the Northeast, everybody is getting geared up to fish March, April. Most tournaments start, depending on the weather or the ice situation on lakes, Not that we have that much ice anymore in the Northeast, but lakes are really starting to become open now in March. And I think you have to attack a lake depending on the seasonal patterns and the time of the year and how you think and how you're going to learn as you become more experienced how to catch fish when the water is, say, cold and as the seasons progress. Now, when the season starts, let's just say I'm going to fish a tournament on Candlewood Lake. And it's ice out, it's early to mid-April. Water temps are probably going to be somewhere in that 40. If it's a hot spring, they could be up to 50. But I'm always guessing we're going to be in the 40s at some point. There's a few things that I'm going to go, and if I pre-fish and that's a whole nother story about pre-fishing, whether it's good, whether it's bad, but we'll talk about that later. I'm usually looking, and my strength, I feel, is throwing a jerkbait, throwing a jig, throwing a hair jig, and maybe throwing a Ned. If I have those 4 baits going and I can rotate them around the lake, try different areas on the lake that I think can produce some fish, that's what I'm going to go with. If I'm going to go, let's say pre-fish, I'm going to start with springtime. I'm always starting with a jerkbait. I'm always starting with a jerkbait. I love to throw a jerkbait. I've done well in many tournaments throwing a jerkbait, especially in the springtime. To me, this is the bait that's going to kind of clue me into what the fish are like. If the fish are eating this, not only am I going to keep throwing it, but I'll know that they're getting pretty active. But I also have to figure out what kind of cadence do they want. Do they want me ripping it? Do they want to hit it on the paws? These are the things that you develop as a tournament fisherman as you get more experience. So in the spring, I usually have a couple of jerkbaits tied on. I may have, now this just happens to be a mega bass, regular 110. I may have a 110 on. I may have a 110 plus 1, and I may also have a junior size on, just to see what size bait they like and how deep they want it. If they're not hitting the 110, I may go to the 110 plus 1. If they're not hitting either one of them, I'll probably try the plus 2, get the bait down there a little deeper, and see if that's the deal. Sometimes when that water's cold, I may have to go with a hair jig. In the spring, I'm always going to have a hair jig tied on. Whatever hair jig you like. And as I said, and like whatever jerkbait you like. You like throwing a Lucky Craft, you like throwing a Mega Bass, you want to throw a Strike King, a Spro, a mixed stick. Whatever you want to throw as a jerkbait is a good jerkbait. I think they're all good. It all depends on how much you want to spend and what you have confidence in. But they're all great, whatever it is you want to throw. These just happen to be some MTO lures, Bill Alexander's hair jigs that I had out on the table. A hair jig is a great bait early in the season. The fish, let's say they don't want that jerkbait. The water's still cold. This bait has bailed my butt out many times in cold water tournaments. So I think the hair jig is a good choice in the springtime. Now remember, we're talking about the Northeast when the water's cold. Another bait that has become a great tournament bait for me is a Ned rig. Now remember, I'm the guy who likes to throw a jig all the time, a 1/2 or a 3/8 ounce jig. But the Ned rig has become a great tournament bait. It's a great way to get bites when the fishing is tough. It's a great bait if your tournament is now moving towards that spawn time and fish are on beds. It's a great way to catch fish, because sometimes there's tournaments that are during the spawning season. So if I was going to go out in the spring on whatever lake I'm going to go on, I'm always going to start with that jerkbait. I'm going to have a hair jig. I'm going to have a Ned, and I'll probably have either a spinner bait on or a chatter bait, just to see. It all depends on how aggressive the fish are early in the season. But as I said, I'm also going to have that jig on, because if I think those fish are moving up and they will eat a jig, I always feel personally, now remember, these are just my feelings on tournament fishing and fishing in general. I would rather, if I know I can get a jig bite, I'd rather fish that jig all day and get 5 bites, because I think they're going to be 5 good ones. And if you want to win a tournament or do well, you want the 5 best fish you can get. Sure, a limit is great, but I would rather throw that jig all day and get 5 bites and have 15 to 20 pounds than throw a Ned all day and catch 15 fish and have 8 or 10 pounds. That's just the way, I look at it as a tournament fisherman, because I'm fishing for big fish. Not that you can't catch big fish on the Ned. I've caught plenty of big fish on a jerkbait in the spring. This is a good big fish bait in the springtime. And I have confidence in them. That's very important, having confidence in those baits that that I'm gonna catch fish in it. I may go an hour without a bite on that, but I know when I get into them, they're gonna be good ones. I may not get a bite in an hour on a jig or a Ned or a hair jig, but I know once I find those fish and I get on them, that's a good way to catch them. So that's just springtime bass fishing as a tournament angler. Now, as you move into the spawn, bed tournaments to me are kind of are hit or miss. There's times when I've won tournaments bed fishing. There's times when I've been to lakes and you would think the fish were all going to be shallow and on beds, and you get there and they're gone. All it takes is one cold night sometimes and they're gone. They move back off. So it's a tough bite to or a tough pattern to kind of depend on all the time, especially if everybody's doing the same thing. If there's spawning bays, everybody pretty much probably knows where they are. But if you're in a tournament and bed fishing is a way to go, I can't find a better bait than the Ned. When I first started tournament fishing or just fishing in general, and I would fish on beds, I would throw a white tube, and it worked very well. I can remember a tournament a few years ago on a lake, and the Ned had just kind of come out and it was starting to become a popular bait, and I was fishing for a bedding largemouth. Didn't want the tube he'd look at it and swim away, look at it and swim away for a long time. I put one of these Ned rigs on, and not necessarily this color. I think it was probably a Z-Man at that time. That was the most popular one. I threw that Ned on that bed, and the minute I did it, you saw that largemouth gills flare, and he nailed it. And I was hooked, no pun intended, ever since. So it's a great sight fishing bait if you're catching fish on beds. I'm not a big fan of tournaments during the spawn. Just personally, that's just a thing with me. I prefer pre-spawn and summertime stuff. But that's it. So if you're fishing a tournament and the fish are on beds, the guys that find those beds with the big fish on it are the guys that are going to do well. As the season progresses and you get more into your summer patterns, that's when I'm really focusing on flipping and pitching. I'm looking for wood. I'm looking for weed. I'm looking for docks. I love to flip docks. If I know I'm going to a lake and it's going to be a tournament day and there's a lot of docks, that's going to be the first place I go. I'm going to go right first thing in the morning, and I want to see if those fish are on docks. And if I find fish on docks, I will fish docks all day for 8 hours and let the chips fall where they may. I love to flip docks. If you find a lake that has a lot of docks, it probably has a lot of pontoon boats. Pontoon boats are a great thing to flip and pitch your jig or your creature bait, whatever it is you're throwing under there. You can skip your Senko under there if you guys like to throw Senkos or stick baits. That's fine. I mean, pontoon boats are great. That's a lot of cover. That water is cooler under there. It's shaded. Bait fish hang around under there, and bass come in there to feed and to hang out. So it's a great ambush point for them. So docks, pontoon boats. And the one thing I will say about that is you also have to be courteous to boat owners and dock owners. I never leave baits. If I get stuck on a dock, I do not just snap it off and leave it. There's many times when I've gone up to docks and taken other people's fishing line and hooks and baits off them, because people see that on there and it gives every fisherman that goes by there for the rest of the summer a bad name. So if I can go there and take that off and just keep everything clean, it's just good for everyone. Be respectful. If I see people hanging out or swimming around docks, I make a wide turn around that. I go past and I go to the next one where there's nobody at. I don't care if it's my favorite dock on the lake. Most people I come across are very friendly, but there are people that do not want you by them. Now, granted, people do not own the lake, but their dock, their boat, I'm not going to be clanging my, my jig off their pontoon boats. You know that sound. My buddy and I used to have a joke where it was, oh, it's acorns. There's acorns falling out of the trees, and it's really our jigs are hitting their pontoon boat. So just be respectful. If you get hung up, go up and take your bait off. Don't leave it there. Don't just snap it off so there's line and baits hanging and hooks hanging. And when I see people around their boats or their docks, I don't fish them. I just move on to the next one, especially a lake where there's hundreds of them. You can probably find a good amount that are pretty clear that you can fish without, bothering anybody. So that's just a personal tip I'll give you guys, just to keep everybody happy. But in a summertime tournament, I'm looking for, if it's a dock lake, I'm looking for docks. If it's a weedy lake, I'm looking to find the best weeds I can find and flip them all day. I also like to get the topwater into the arsenal during the summertime months. I'll have my buzzbait on. Sometimes I'll switch off between a buzzbait and a whopper plopper, seeing what they want. Sometimes they want a pop bar. Sometimes they want like a spook or something like that. Whatever is your favorite topwater that you have faith in, go with it. I've had, fished many tournaments where they wanted the buzzbait. It's like fishing in general. Some days they want the buzzbait. Some days they want that whopper plopper. Some days they might want just a pop bar. Sometimes they might want that spook. Walk the dog. Whichever one you have the most faith in. But if it's a morning where, it seems like there's some topwater activity, the fish are pretty active, it's a good way to go those morning hours. Most tournaments start at 6 o'clock in the morning. And that's one thing I don't miss about tournaments, is getting up at 3 or 4 in the morning and then driving 2 hours and fishing, and then all day and then driving home. So that's another thing I don't miss about it. I prefer fun fishing much more now. But, I'll have, in the summertime, I'm going to have that topwater on, a few different topwaters. Usually I'll have 3 or 4 flipping sticks ready to go. And some of that is because I might have different colored jigs tied on, one I might have set up as a Texas rig, one I might have set up as a swim jig, and I also have more than one in case I get like a bad backlash. And this is a tournament. I don't want to spend time pulling it out, and if I do and the line is crappy and I can't trust it the rest of the day, I'm not going to sit there and re-spool. I'll just pick up another flipping stick and use that all day. So that's just me. I like to have at least 3 or 4 flipping setups if I know I'm going to be doing a lot of flipping and pitching. Really, I'm doing pitching. I'm not really doing much flipping. I'll flip every now and then, but most of the time I'm just pitching jigs and soft plastics around. But that's the summertime. If those fish are not shallow, as a tournament fisherman, that's what you have to realize. If I say I'm going to go focus on those docks and I fish them for an hour or two and there ain't nothing there, me and my partner, if I got one, are going to say, we got to try something else. This ain't cutting it. That's when I may have to pull off the bank. I may have to get on the outside of those weed lines. I may have to get into deeper weeds. Maybe the 2 to 3 foot weed lines close to the bank aren't producing. Maybe they're in that 8 to 10 foot weed line, that 5 to 10, that 10 to 15. Maybe I have to get on the outside of those weed lines and throw a drop shot. I've won tournaments throwing drop shots before. That's not the way I want to fish, but you have to let the fish tell you what they want or what they want to eat. And tournament fishing sometimes is trial and error. And even if you pre-fish and you may get a great jig bite on, and if I have a tournament on, say, Saturday, I don't want to really be doing any pre-fishing a couple days before that. If I go, it's going to be very early in the week, because I'm a firm believer anything I catch in pre-fishing, I ain't going to catch in the tournament. So you got to be careful not to burn your fish out pre-fishing. Sometimes I think pre-fishing is overrated. And there's a lot of things I'm going to bring up here in this that if you guys hear and want me to talk more about, I know it's a lot to take in. If you're new to it, just let me know and I can expand upon it, and do just a video and talk about that aspect of it, okay? Which is pre-fishing. So I've had times where pre-fishing has helped. I have had times where pre-fishing has hurt me, and I've had times where no pre-fishing is better than has worked out great, just not even going. And that all depends a lot on how well you know a body of water. If you know it real well, you need to go and burn your fish up. You know what you're going to do. You fished the lake 100 times. I know I'm going to go out there and throw a spinnerbait. Do I need to go out there on Tuesday before the tournament and catch 15 bass on a spinnerbait when I know I'm going to do that on Saturday? Why waste your time? Why burn your fish? Sometimes an important part of pre-fishing is eliminating water, especially if it's a big lake. There was a tournament I fished years ago with my old bass club where we pre-fished for 2 days on Lake Champlain. Now, Lake Champlain, you guys know, is pretty big. And everywhere we fished was okay. Fish here, fish there, fish here, fish there. And my partner, who we went up and to pre-fish for the 2 days, we said to ourselves after those 2 days of pre-fishing, I said, we could go and catch some fish where we pre-fished, but we're not going to win. We knew what we were catching was very mediocre. A couple fish here and there. If we could have both eked out 8 to 10 pounds, we would have been lucky. We said, we got to go try new water. The day of the tournament, we went to a completely different area, and right place, right time, get into a back river type area coming in to Lake Champlain, and absolutely have a slam fest of, we find schooling smallies, largemouth in weeds, and you know, between us catching almost 40 pounds of bass. And that was because we pre-fished the 2 days before that, realized that 10 or 15 miles south wasn't going to cut it for us. And so we took a ride, and it worked out. So sometimes it works out that way. Sometimes pre-fishing is a good way to eliminate water and let you know what you shouldn't be doing, because what you did for those 2 days was not cutting it. So as I said, there's a lot of aspects of tournament fishing. And I know this might be sensory overload for some of you guys if you're new to it, but a lot of it comes with experience. As the seasons go on, you know, that summer pattern, I hope, is consistent. I go to, you know, and I find as the season goes on, the fish get a little more beat up from tournaments, from just the fishing season, more people on the water. You know, you may have to go to those more finesse things like drop shotting, throwing a Ned, you know, hoping you get that topwater bite going in the morning. You know, maybe doing some deep cranking. Now, I have never really had a lot of success deep cranking in a tournament. That's kind of something I do when I'm fun fishing, just to see if it works. I can't think in my mind of any tournament where a deep crank bite like saved my butt in a tournament, or I would even think that I would be able to do it, you know, catch fish on it well enough that I would use it in the tournament. I like to throw like a square bill. If I have a lake that has lots of expansive flats and some grass, a square bill is a great option in the summertime. And just burning it through that grass. And that's a great way to get bites. You can cover a lot of water, and you don't necessarily need a lot of wind. Like I prefer that like if I know it's going to be a windy day, I'm going to throw that spinnerbait and that chatterbait a lot, especially the spinnerbait. Chatterbait is kind of more, you know, I don't really necessarily need a lot of wind. If I've got grass, this is a great way to catch a lot of fish and a lot of big fish. The chatterbait has become a really great producer for me. You know, if I'm fishing a lot of, you know, 8 foot and less, let's say, and I've got weeds, that's a great way to go, that chatterbait. But as the season keeps going on, you're getting into your July, your August, you know, things can get tough, you know, especially when it's hot weather. A lot of times we had night tournaments in the summertime. You know, just because and I can remember night tournaments when the lake wasn't busy. The last one I fished, the lake was like, it was like the middle of the day. There were so many people on the water late at night blasting music out. On Candlewood Lake, it was really annoying. Speaking of Candlewood, there's a map right there. You know, sometimes night fishing can be good. You know, night tournaments, if you can. I personally do not like night tournaments. Sure, it's nice when it's cooler out. In theory, the lake is less busy. But when the sense of your eyesight is gone from fishing, it makes things difficult. It can be fun going out there at 2 o'clock in the morning and whipping big spinnerbaits around, and 5-pound smallies are crushing them to the point where the spinnerbaits are getting broken in half. Sure, that can be fun sometimes, but it's a long night. And it's a longer day the next day, you know, because it takes me 2 days or 3 days to recover from those night tournaments. as the season progresses, if the fishing gets tougher, don't be afraid to, get out deeper, throw those drop shots, um, work those outside of those weed lines, where the fish may be a little less, beat up, a little less harassed. Of course, now with, forward-facing sonar tournaments, fish really have nowhere to go not to get harassed. And I'm not going to get into that topic, but that's not something I do. So I'll leave it at that. So the fish don't really have anywhere to go nowadays to kind of, relax a little and just live. But like I said, that's a whole nother topic. As the season I keep saying produces, as the season progresses and you get to your Septembers, and remember guys, I'm talking about the Northeast where I fish. September, when the nights start to get cooler and things start to cool down, to me, that's when that jig bite really gets good. Once that water starts to get a little colder, those fish might be starting to think, maybe winter's coming here soon. Maybe I should start chomping on some stuff. And I really like that fall, that late summer, early fall jig bite, that flipping bite. Usually any lake you go to, the weeds are the highest and the greenest they're probably going to be all year. They're loaded with bait. They're loaded with crayfish. And to me, that's a fun time of the year. It's more pleasant to be out there, especially when guys start hunting, and there's even less of them out there. But that's really a good time of the year for that jig bite, that flip and bite, pitch and bite. That's really a lot of fun. That's almost when things start to become, I want to say good again. After maybe if summer's a little tough, it's a little hot, maybe things are slow, the fish are a little finicky. Fall is when things start to get good again. Seems like they get more aggressive. As I said, the weeds are at their apex there, and you're really ready to go. And that's when I really like to focus on flipping and pitching and things like that. And then, usually your late season tournaments, that water gets cold again. The top water stuff to me is kind of, it seems like when the nights start to get cold again, like I like to throw a frog. If I'm on a lake that's got, a lot of matted vegetation, a frog is I've won tournaments just frog fishing in my career as a tournament fisherman. Sometimes that frog is the way to go. It seems like in the fall, when those nights start to get cold, that frog bite that kind of goes away, at least what I've experienced in the Northeast. It seems like it kind of gets a little, they don't seem to want it as much, when the nights start to get cold. The buzzbait bite can get pretty good though, in the fall. That's, to me, in the fall, that's when I like to throw those swim baits, maybe a bigger swim bait. I like to throw the chatter bait. I like to throw a spinner bait. Some guys, when it gets a little cooler, go back to the jerk bait. To me, I have never, there might be guys, there's a lot of guys who tell me that this is a 12-month-a-year bait, and maybe if they're, using forward-facing sonar, jerk bait's more of a player for them in the summertime. For me, in the Northeast, just fishing 2D sonar, the jerk bait to me is a spring bait pretty much exclusively. I've chucked them around in the summer and in the fall when I think the fall they're going to turn onto it again, but it has never really produced for me. Maybe I just need to do it more to get more confidence in it, but to me this is a better spring bait than a fall bait. There's probably people that might watch this video that totally disagree with that, and that's just their experience. Mine is, it's just not a great option for the fall. Maybe I just need to do it more. But to me, it seems like in the spring when the fish are moving up, the jerk bait is better. In the fall, when they're starting to move out, and they're in the early winter when they're kind of moving away, I don't think it's that great. That's when I'd rather throw the hair jig again, the Ned. A football head jig can be very good. Dragging that in deeper water, that can be very good. But like I said earlier, it all depends on what lake you're fishing. There's lakes where that are, very color specific, very bait specific. You'll hear people that know lakes, well, that's a great jig lake, or that's a great worm lake. That's a great place to that lake is great for topwater fishing. That's a great crankbait lake, whatever. Lakes do have personalities, in my opinion, for that, and a lot of that also comes from, individuals' experiences on those lakes. And you have to, I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, you have to fish, in my opinion, for your own fish. Don't get caught up in what other people are saying is going on. A lot of times it's bull crap anyway. But you can't fish for someone else's fish. You can't fish for someone else's pattern. If you hear, guys at the ramp before, oh, I killed him out here this week on, Ned rigs or drop shots, whatever. First of all, it's probably BS. Secondly, that doesn't mean you can go out and just say, oh, I'll just go throw a drop shot. I'll just go over there and throw a drop shot and catch fish. They may have found a specific spot on a specific day with a specific bait where the drop and ran into a school of fish and caught a bunch on a drop shot. You may go back there 24 hours later and they may be gone. So, you can't fish someone else's water, in my opinion. You can't fish someone else's, baits. You can't fish someone else's fish. You gotta develop your own patterns, your own confidence, and your own way of fishing. And confidence is probably the most important thing. I probably said that before. I have confidence in the spring. I'm going to catch fish on this. I may only get 5 bites in a day, but they're going to be good ones. Just like a jig fish, I have confidence in this chatterbait in certain conditions that I'm going to get bites on it. I may go an hour and not catch anything, but I have confidence in it. So you have to have, and confidence comes with experience. So I don't want to repeat myself, here, but confidence is very important. As far as tournaments go, I'm looking at where here I am in the Northeast. Tournaments pretty much are, let's say, April to November. After that, March, maybe, depending on where you are. December, maybe, but things are getting a little chilly then. Most of the tournaments I know of around here by me, where I live now, not that I fish any of them, seem to kind of close, things kind of, shut down in November. When it gets December, it starts to get a little unpleasant out there. And, when I go to the ramp in the morning in December and they're starting to be like, skim ice on the water, that's where I'm starting to think, well, maybe that's it for the season. That might be time to pack it away. But, tournament fishing is a lot of fun. It's not for everybody. I think if you're, anybody watching this, if you've never fished a tournament before and your goal is just I want to learn more about bass fishing. I want to learn more about different baits. A club is a great way to learn. It's a great way to learn. One of my favorite things is the camaraderie that you have with other bass fishermen. One of my favorite things, being in a bass club was when we would go on trips to other lakes. If we'd go to our classic and we'd have 15, 20, 25 guys, staying at one or two places, all getting together, going out for dinner, everybody fishing together for a few days and then having our tournament. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. And, in a club tournament, you're not going to make $1 million. If you make a couple $100 here and there fishing, it's great. I was always happy if I had enough money. I have a little thing upstairs called, fishing jar. Or it says fishing fund on it, actually. And if I had enough money, enough cash in that at the end of the season to pay to get my boat, serviced and winterized, I was happy. It was a good season. So it was a good season. So if I had enough money, cash at the end of the season, I would do that. Because if you fish 50 tournaments, if you win a few here and there, it's great. Nobody's going to win every tournament. You lose a lot more tournaments than you win. So when you win one, you really, enjoy it. Enjoy those good days. Because it doesn't happen all the time. It's tough. Everybody knows what they're, if you're fishing in a club and it's a 200 or 300 100-acre lake, everybody knows the lake. They know where every rock is. They know where every stump is, where every weed line is. Everybody knows those lakes like the back of their hand. So, it's just the camaraderie of, with the guys hanging out. And that's the part of it that I miss. As far as tournament fishing goes, I don't miss getting up at, 2 or 3 in the morning and driving 100 miles or whatever and then going fishing and then driving home. I don't miss that part at all. But hanging out with all the guys in the club and doing things like that and those trips we would take, that was the best part. That was the best part, in my opinion. So, don't get into it thinking, well, I'm going to win, $1 million. Sure, if you win a tournament and you win a couple $100, it's great. It's a lot of fun. You feel good. It really gets your confidence, peaked up. And but get into it because you want to learn. That's the first thing I would say. Get into it because you want to learn. Be patient. Learn from everyone that you fish with, especially if you go in and you're a co-angler. Learn from those boaters. Learn everything. If there's 20 guys in the club and 10 of them have boats, you'll probably draw a different one for every tournament. You'll learn something from each guy. And that's what it's about. That's what it's about. It's really what it's about. Look at it as a learning experience. And what I did is I started as a club fisherman. I enjoyed it. I got into it. I did not have a boat, and then I bought a boat. My first boat, excuse me, was a 14-foot aluminum. I started fishing small tournaments in that. Then I got my first boat with a motor. It was like a 16 or 17-foot Monarch with a 90 horsepower. I fished a New Jersey Federation tournament on Lake George in that boat. Had a lot of fun. So my club was in the Federation. You go and you fish those. We're fishing in Lake George. In those days in the Federation, you might have had 100 guys in a tournament. Nowadays, it's a lot less, but things were a lot cheaper in those days too, as far as fishing goes. And and then I got my first glass boat. I wanted to fish bigger tournaments. I fished some BFLs and donated my money to all the guys up in New York when I went to them. But I did it because I wanted to learn those lakes. I didn't go into it saying, well, I'm just going to go up there and I'm going to win. Yeah, right. I'm going to go fish against, 50 guys who have fished that lake more times than I fished my local lake. And I'm driving about Lake Champlain looking at, one of these maps going, oh, okay, let's go try that spot. It's all learning. It's all about learning. It's all about learning. I was always, when I fished those BFLs, I said, I want to catch a limit. If I catch a limit, I feel like, I'm getting better as a bass fisherman. Whether I finish 20th or 120th, I don't care. I'm not going up there saying I'm going to kick everybody's butt and I'm going to win. I knew I wasn't going to. There's all those experienced guys that have much more experience than me on those lakes. I wanted to go up there to learn those lakes. And trying that BFL forced me to go up there and do it. Sure, I could have just gone up and rented a house and fished, for fun, but it forced me to go up there. Me and my buddies did it the one year. We had a lot of fun. We would travel up there, fish for a couple days, fish the tournament, and I would learn the lake. Now every turn I made around to a different cove wasn't a mystery. I was like, oh yeah, I fished there. I caught a fish there. I caught a fish there. I caught a fish there in 99. I caught a fish there in 2000. I caught some back there in 2001. That's why you have to do it. If you really want to do it as a learning experience. I never had a goal that it was going to become a career, like that I was going to depend on catching fish, for a living. No way. It was a hobby. And I look at it that way. It's a hobby. I enjoy it. As you can see, I'm very much into it. A lot of years gone into all that stuff. I love to do it. Here I am. I'm still doing it. Now I'm doing it for fun. I'm doing it and making YouTube videos. That's where the fun and the learning is in it for me now. And I still learn when I go out. I learn something every day. The videos you see on baits that I buy now, I'm always trying to learn different techniques. I'm getting more the last couple of years into the bigger swim baits. That's something guys have been doing that a long time. Me, I'm just starting to get into that now, and I'm enjoying it. It's a different bite. It's a different way to fish. It's a different way to look at, I can't just throw a jig all the time. Well, I guess I can, but I'm enjoying learning those different swim baits and how to throw them and the right cadence and how fast to reel them and how slow to, I'm learning. I'm still learning, I'm 60 years old now. 45 years later, I probably started fishing when I was, probably when I was 12. So almost 50 years, still learning. And that's what it's important. If you want to get into tournament fishing, do it because it's a learning experience. And just, be a sponge, take in everything from all the people that you fish with. There's no person you're going to fish with where you can't learn something from. And the time will come where a young angler will learn something from you. And that's what it's all about. So, I could probably talk about this topic for hours, but then you guys would all fall asleep and turn off the video. So I don't want to do that. It's probably already an hour. Well, 40 minutes, not bad. I've talked about a lot here. I hope it wasn't too boring. And if it's something you're interested in, if you guys want to dive into it deeper, if there's something I said that you want me to expand on, let me know. I think it's a fun discussion. I think tournament fishing is a lot of fun. You know, I'm not a big fan of where professional fishing is now at this time. But, you know, I'm not a professional bass fisherman, nor will I ever be. And I'm just kind of talking about if you want to be, you know, if you're a beginner in tournament fishing, you want to give it a shot. That's where I'm at. That's where I think my experience lies that I can talk about with some confidence with you guys. So that's it. As I said, if there's anything that I kind of just said, you know, in passing, and you want me to talk more about, let me know. Please, any questions, put them in the comments. I love when you guys, you know, put questions in there. That is what sparked the idea of this video. The video I did on the frogs the other day, someone in the comments mentioned, Mark, how about that? And now about tournament fishing, somebody talked about that. And as you can see, it's a broad topic. It's a broad topic. What someone who lives in California can tell you about tournament fishing is probably the opposite or different than what I can tell you about here as someone who's fished tournaments in the Northeast. And I live in New Hampshire now. I've never fished one tournament in New Hampshire. I fished all my tournaments in New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Maryland, even though I hate the flats. That's pretty much it. I've never had fished a tournament in New Hampshire, and I probably won't since I'm, I guess you'd say, retired. But I guess if somebody in my town started a bass club tomorrow, who knows? Maybe I'd join it if they needed members. But just for, you know, just to get to learn from other people, to know other people. As I said, that camaraderie with other tournament anglers, to me, that's one of the things that's the best part of it. That's probably the best part of it, other than the learning aspect. But that's it, guys. So I hope you guys learned something from that. And remember, these are just my opinions on tournament fishing based on my experiences of doing it and fishing, you know, hundreds of tournaments over the years. And, you know, that's it. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. So like I said, any questions, if anybody wants me to talk about more, I mean, we could make a series on these really if we wanted to, on different aspects of tournament fishing. I mean, we didn't discuss, you know, map study, which I think can be very important. You know, the night before prep, boat prep, there's just so much, you know, as you get more experienced and more, you know, a higher level of tournaments where you really, you know, are looking for that little bit of, you know, advice on stuff or information on stuff, or just what do you do, you know, because what I do may not be what someone else does, and that's okay. It's okay, because it's, you know, there's no absolutes in bass fishing or fishing, and there's no absolutes in tournament fishing. You know, it's all, you know, everybody's experience is different, and the difference in a tournament can be sometimes as simple as I went out of the ramp and went left, or I went right. That could be the difference between 20 pounds and getting skunked. It can be as simple as that. I went off the ramp and I went left and went fishing, and I had a great day. I went out to the ramp and I went right, and it sucked. I was on the same lake. But sometimes it's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. So, you know what, guys? I'm going to end this here because I don't want to start babbling. I'll be repeating myself. So, any questions, please let me know. Please let me know. And I hope for you guys that are considering getting into tournaments, or some of the questions you may have had, you know, that this helps. I hope it does. All right. So I'll see you guys on YouTube. I will see you guys soon on YouTube. I can't even talk anymore. I will see you guys soon on YouTube. Mark out.